Hello everyone, John Maher here, and this is your weekly Grass10 update on the dairy edge. Well, another difficult week for all things grazing has gone by. Grass growth was a little bit below normal, I suppose, at 5 kilograms of dry matter per hectare per day. The rain's not doing much to help the growth rate there, but the growth rate predictions for the week ahead are a little bit better, all right, at about 10 kilos per day for across the country. I suppose highest in the southwest and lowest in the northwest. But the rainfall, unfortunately, remains a challenge for many, many parts of the country and will continue to do so for this week. Let's hope next week is a better story. Speaking of rainfall, dry matters are running at about 14 or 15%. Do you know, it's funny, this time last year they were a lot higher at around 20%. But anyway, as I say, we are where we are. The average farm cover remains about 850 kilograms of dry matter per hectare. That's the average, but when we look at the figures, it's a case of those who have plenty of grass and those who have a very tight supply of grass. We'll come back to that in a minute. Any grazing that is taking place, and there's a nice bit going on, more than I would have thought given everything that was happening. It's kind of a very much an on-off approach. Again, like for that to work, you have to have a lot of ducks lined up in a row. Cows have to have an appetite. That's important when they go out. I'll explain what our feature farmer is doing there in a minute, Ger Whelan. But getting the silage allocation is one of the big pieces of that jigsaw to get it right if you're going to do this. We need high and dry paddocks, square in shape, kind of medium cover of grass, so that like you're not going to, with the weather conditions, you're not going to graze it as well as you would like to. So if there's grass left behind, that it's green and leafy to the base. So when we get it the next time around, that it's very edible. There's a flexibility required in the farmer as well in terms of doing this. Again, I'll touch on this in a minute when we get to Ger Whelan's story. The story of grass supply then on many farms remains with about 50% of farms having a good grass supply and another 50% of farms largely tight on grass supply. And I suppose there are two grass budgets outlined in the Grass10 newsletter, going through the grazing and feeding milestones for the next 6 weeks or 7 weeks. For both scenarios, you know, where those who have grass and those who haven't grass in their budgets into mid-April. Now, having grass and not having grass, you know, those budgets are based largely across what's left in terms of the first rotation. So people will argue one thing or another, but when you are tight on grass supply, given modern genetics, giving modern demand, giving what's required, in general, grass allocations remain very, very tight where the farm cover is not high and there's a lot of silage going in all the way into April. So, you know, a low grass supply is of concern and it's of greater concern if the feed supply in the yards is also tight. So just to remind people of that, so there's a planning required if you're tight on feed supply and tight on grass supply. So then to our feature farmer, Ger Whelan from Ballinahinch, Bodyke, County Clare. Ger held an event on his farm today. Great that we have farmers doing this. It's not easy to have these events, especially the way the weather is. But cows have been out every day, and I suppose we're up on close on 10% graze now. They go out for a minimum of 2 hours. Milking finishes around 8:30 in the morning, and they're held in the yard till about 10:30, and then they go out. If the day is good, might be 3 hours, maybe 4, but for a minimum of 2 hours, right? So Ger started calving in early February. He's been on-off grazing largely since. Some of the farm got slurry all right early on in the period at about 2,500 gallons to the acre. About over half the herd of calve now. He will calve over 90% in 6 weeks or thereabouts. The diet at the moment is that 4 or 5 kilos of grass, 3.5 kilo of meal, and high quality silage made from surplus grass. So it's great to have that silage going in when the animals come back in. But you know, they don't see silage between 8:30 and 10:30. They have access to water, all right. But so the cows go out with an edge in them or an appetite on them. So that's important. Ger is waiting to spread both slurry and fertilizer. His plan now is to go on 2 splits of nitrogen, 30 units per acre, as soon as the weather allows, and again in late March, which is, you know, the strategy that has to evolve. You know, we're trying to get, I suppose, about 60 units out by early April. So that's the way Ger's going to do that. 2 splits of about 30 units. I know some people are planning to do 25 at the end of February and 35 at the end of March. I could live with that too, to be honest. But unless the allowances are very, very tight, I think we have to be spreading 25 or 30 units as soon as the weather picks up, which we'll have to wait on, I'm afraid. So, as I said, Ger hosted a spring grazing event this week, and more of those are planned across the country. The list of these events is in the Grass10 newsletter if you want further details on them. But there's about 8 planned for next week. And people say, well, the weather is difficult, and why would I go to a grazing event? I'll argue that, when the weather hopefully does improve, it's still going to take a bit of effort to get going. So there are plans, tricks, strategies, ideas that you'll pick up off these farms that are doing this to get started, if you haven't done so already. I understand there are challenges around slurry in many yards at the moment. So many farmers are moving slurry around tanks on the farm, and they can be anywhere within the farm, I suppose, but it takes a bit of work. But obviously, some farmers are in difficulty here, and I suppose some are cherry picking paddocks to spread some of the watery slurry, I would suggest, at low rates on the driest paddocks just to take the bit of pressure off. But the storage management takes a bit of thinking out now and a bit of planning. So hopefully the weather will improve soon, and people will get to spread some slurry. I suppose finally, if you'd like to hear more from the Grass10 team, subscribe to the weekly Grass10 newsletter, which is available on the Grass10 page on the Teagasc public website. And the link to newsletter is also available in the description of this podcast. We'd like to thank all those who support the Grass10 campaign, AIB, Grass and Agro, Department of Agriculture, FBD and the Farmers Journal. This has been your Grass10 update, and I will talk to you all next week, and I hope things will improve.